Assassin's Promise by Thomas Woodward, Chapter 13. Millie gathered the last of her belongings in a hushed state. She felt nothing. She wanted to feel anger or sorrow, but she felt strangely empty, waiting for something to fill her with purpose. Her parents had roused her an hour ago, and she was to be ready for the caravan that would deliver her westward within the hour. She rubbed her eyes. They were dry. Standing before the full-length mirror and wash basin in the corner of her room, she regarded herself. She saw a young woman stare back at her, red hair spilling in ringlets over her shoulders. Cool blue eyes like water stones stared out blankly from a youthful face, free of worry. She stood just shy of 2 measures, shorter than her father, but of a similar height with her mother Marie. A bright garnet dress gave her a noble grace. Her hair had been pinned in several places, smooth red stones inserted in place of traditional fire drops. She wore two larger red river stones that had been carved and polished in teardrop-shaped earrings. Light garnet slippers completed the outfit. Her fire-red hair felt restrained. Millie preferred to wear it long, or gathered into a simple braid over her shoulder. Her delicate features were marred by an unreadable expression that she held. Looking longingly over the place she had lived her entire life, she forced herself to leave the room. Shoulders slumped, Peter stood near the landing, peering over at her. He had been so kind to her all these years. He was sort of like an older brother, although he had no relation to her. She smiled and made her farewells to him. He gave her a bronze noble and pressed it into her hand before rushing away. It must have been a month's pay to him. Millie stood for a moment, unsure whether to go after him and to try to return it, or simply accept the generous gift. Slowly placing it in a leather-stringed pouch where she kept her possessions, she moved towards the landing. She would miss them, everyone here in the town, she realized. Even though she hadn't taken part in many of the conversations between the local regulars, they were fascinating to her. She loved the gentle background noise of the inn. Drawing a full breath, she glided forward, making her way to the common room. Thane and Marie, her parents, were waiting for her expectantly. Marie stepped close and checked Millie's makeup, brushing her cheeks to make sure the blush was perfect. She was just going through the motions, however. It was clear Marie's mind was trying to distract herself from her daughter's departure. Thane rested a reassuring hand on his wife's shoulder, silently lending her his support. "Don't cry, child. It will ruin your makeup," Marie admonished lightly. Millie's face was cool and dry. She felt like she should show some kind of emotion, but she had already made her peace with leaving. She was ready. "Mother, will you and Father write to me? I don't know how long it will take for me to reach my destination, but I would like that." Millie made herself brighten, smiling at her parents, trying to make them feel they didn't need to worry. She stepped forward and hugged them both in a tight embrace. She felt the sobs come before realizing they were her own. "I told myself I wouldn't cry." Her parents returned the hug with a fierceness she had not expected. She blinked tears away and just stayed there for a moment, trying to make time stop for just another moment. She felt the warmth. Then she stepped away, pushing free of the embrace. Hot, dry air met her as they moved through the front door of the inn. A caravan waited patiently before them. The driver was a man of advanced years. He sat the reins with a reassuring air. A young guard stepped up from the back of the cart behind the horses and asked if he could take any of her bags. Millie handed her sack of clothing up to the young man and stepped forward to meet the driver. Her parents were impressing upon him the importance of keeping their daughter safe. The driver waved their worries away with a practiced care and got down off from his seat to meet Millie himself. Millie curtsied as she had been taught, trying her best to get the posture right. Her parents smiled at her effort, standing off to one side. Peter lumbered up to the caravan and held a stern eye that he fixed first on the young guard and then the driver in turn. His simple look spoke volumes. "You will protect this young woman with your life." No words passed between them. After a moment, apparently satisfied, Peter stepped away with a brief nod and headed back to the inn to get the rest of Millie's belongings. Millie stepped forward, and with the assistance of the young man, she stepped up into the covered wagon. Strange smells assaulted her. Sweet spices, the caustic smell of smoke, and the familiar scent of unwashed bodies. Blessedly, the last smell was only minor, and blended in with the smell of wagons and horses. The horses stamped lightly, stretching their legs and flaring their nostrils. They clearly wanted to be off. Millie looked briefly overhead. A familiar skyline met her, a brilliant blue sky, unbroken as far as the eye could see. The blinding sun beat down above, causing waves of heat to rise off the ground. Ducking lightly back into the wagon, Millie let a smile across her face. She leaned back into the seat and whistled to herself softly. She felt the wagon rock as the driver got back into his seat. Looking to her left, she noticed a young woman sitting next to her, a heavy sword belted at her waist and a serious expression on her face. She was looking forward and hadn't bothered to look over at Millie. She wore a heavy leather jerkin and had tied off the sleeves by her elbows to help with the heat. A leather helmet covered most of her hair, but a short knot of yellow-gold hair pushed past the back of the helmet in a slim braid. She had brown eyes and appeared to be in her 20s, and had a rugged look to her, clearly well-muscled. "So, what are you in for?" Millie joked, turning towards the other woman. The blonde woman turned to her and smiled. She was relaxed, but appeared ready to move into action at any moment. Like a natural predator, she had a grace of motion that was hard to place. There was a pure efficiency to her movements. "My name is Kayana. I am here to protect you." It was a simple statement, but surprising all the same to Millie. She hadn't considered there would be any danger in making the journey to the far coast. She assumed naively that everyone would be as friendly as they had been to her here in the sleepy desert town that was her home. Millie pursed her lips, not sure how to proceed with her newfound guard. The blonde woman had already returned to her position, resting her gaze easily forward. Tense but relaxed at the same time somehow. She seemed completely content in just sitting there, but there was a keenness about her, like a weapon uncoiled and ready to strike at a moment's notice. Millie wondered where the woman hailed from. She was lightly tanned, but had striking golden hair, which was rare in these parts. Millie herself had been somewhat of a rarity with her ember-red curls. She had been the talk of the town for quite a while after she was born, and took after her father with his brilliant red hair. Her mother Marie was a slight, fair-skinned woman with curly dark brown hair. She shared similar facial features with her mother. The townsfolk were a mix of some with paler complexion with dark hair, and several sun-darkened locals with beautiful straight black hair. Millie had heard stories of someone with golden hair being seen once off to the far coast, past the desert's edge. Millie heard the door of the wagon click as it opened on the other side, past where Kayana sat. The young man who had helped her with her bags earlier stepped gingerly into the seat next to the guardswoman with an easy sigh. He brightened as he caught Millie's gaze. "We're just about to be underway, miss. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Gerald. Gerald Maisie. I hope you'll be having a good trip to wherever you're headed, miss." He smiled and offered his hand in greeting, reaching over Kayana in the process. Kayana seemed cut from stone for all the movement she gave as he did so. Embarrassed at the situation, Millie reached forward to shake hands with Gerald. "Thank you, kind sir. I'm hoping it will be a good trip. Have you, Kayana met already?" Millie said, hoping not to make an odd situation more awkward. "Oh yes," Gerald rejoined. "We have both been hired to protect you." There it was again. Just a simple statement, said so casually. Millie wondered what the world beyond the desert would be like. She returned to her seat and tried to lean back a little. Finding a position that was both comfortable and proper was amazingly difficult to accomplish in her bulky dress. After exchanging greetings, the caravan began to rumble forward, the dust being kicked up by the horses as they pulled forward from a trot to a canter. The wagon jostled occasionally, but the older man at the reins was remarkably skilled in his craft and provided a smoother ride than she thought possible. Stretching to look out the window, Millie saw her parents' figures disappear to view as the town fell away behind them. There was a good travel-worn road that the caravan followed, but beyond that there was nothing. Desert, dunes, and rocks baking in the sun were all that greeted her. Tight rock formations reached towards the sky on one side of the road, reddish canyon cliffs carved out by wind and sand. Honeycomb-like holes peppered the canyon walls where sand had ravaged it most. Storms were common here in the desert. Unlike storms of water and wind, they were formed of sand and raging cyclone winds. They beat mercilessly against the landscape with reckless abandon. There were whole days when travel was impossible due to the desert storms. She prayed they would not be caught in the open by one during their journey. Millie felt a hand on her shoulder. Spinning abruptly, Millie saw Kayana with a curious expression on her face. "This garment you wear, how can you even move in it?" Millie relaxed, but her heart was still beating fast. She had not even noticed the woman's approach. Millie smiled. "Kayana, would you like to wear it? Personally, I think it's too bulky and silly. I do love the red, though." Kayana smiled back at her for a moment before returning back to her seat. I could never afford. It would be very kind of you, miss." Millie stared back, realizing that of course the woman could save her money up for a year and still be unable to afford a dress like the one she wore. Millie smiled and reassured Kayana that she would be happy to send one to her after she got settled on the far coast. She hoped she would be able to deliver on that promise. Looking again out the window, she hoped that the weather stayed calm. With a sigh, Millie lay back into the seat. The gentle noise of the wagon wheels and the lightly blowing wind on her face lulled her to sleep. She hadn't realized how much tension she had held under the stress of the past few days. She would just let it all melt away. Millie faintly heard a bird cry overhead before she passed into unconsciousness. Hi everyone. If you've been enjoying my content and you'd like to support my channel, you can do so at patreon.com/authorsprocess. And it would mean a great deal to me to be able to keep bringing you great content and sharing it with you on multiple platforms. Here is the page that you will see if you choose to support me. And on this page, you will be able to choose what membership level you could support at. Again, only if you choose to. But we have the initial level dedicated to the arts, and then lover of the arts, patron of the arts, and grand patron of the arts. So what you will receive is early access to my content, and then at the higher levels, your name will be listed at the end of each of my videos in a special thanks section. So again, please consider it. It would mean a great deal to me. And thank you so much again. Even if you're unable to support monetarily, just viewing my content is great support as well. So thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate you.